Hello, welcome to the Invited Artists online discussion for the Royal Scottish Academy Annual Exhibition 2022, the 196th Annual Exhibition. My name's Robbie Bushe. I was the convener and the convener for this year's exhibition. And welcome and thank you for signing up. We've got four artists with us tonight. Jackie Berridge, Laura Foots, Michael Johnson, and Debbie Lee. And each of them shortly is going to take you through some of their work, including the work that they featured in this year's exhibition. One of the great delights of being convener is that I had the opportunity to decide and curate which artists I would like to show. And that can be invited artists, it can be themed work. And I thought long and hard about this. And particularly during the last 2 or 3 years when we were not able to visit galleries and museums, more of us artists and art consumers were spending time on their phones, flicking through the competition on Instagram. And I can't say that I discovered all of these artists about doing that, but I was reacquainted with them and seeing the work they were doing, the careers they were having. And there was something about the four of these artists, and we'll have this through the discussion, that resonated with me, whether it's the slightly quirky, unself-conscious figuration, the storytelling, the kind of very interpersonal relationships within the work, or the figurative dimension, or the sheer joy of drawing and exuberant kind of compositions. Something resonated. I felt that I belonged to their family. I don't know if that's true. So what we're going to do, though, guys, is we're going to invite each of the artists to show some of their work in turn, about sort of 10 minutes each. We'll have a conversation through their work, and if you want to ask questions, we can't see you, this is a webinar by the way. If you want to ask questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can go to the Q&A, and either myself or Nick Wong, who's the RSA Development Manager, who's on call with us tonight, helping us facilitate this, will prompt me to say to read out some questions and get some answers going. There's no other housekeepings because this is recorded, but your image or your voice won't be recorded because we're not seeing you tonight. We're just seeing the participants. We're hoping there won't be any technical glitches, but you know what it's like, I'm sure all of you, with internet Zoom sessions and so on. I'm in a remote part of the house in Edinburgh, and we've got Margate, Kings Lynn, Dorset and Nottinghamshire to cover, so we'll see how we get on. So I won't say without further ado, except I just have. We'll move on. We'll move on to the first of our artists, and that's Jackie. So what I'm going to do is share screen. In fact, can we make Jackie full screen first of all, so everyone can see Jackie? Nick, are you able to do that? There we are. Welcome, Jackie. So tell us exactly where you are tonight.
I'm in Southwell, which is north of Nottingham, and it's about 8 miles from Sherwood Forest. So, and it's in the middle of the country.
Fantastic. So, Jackie, you live in Nottingham, and you also studied at Nottingham Fine Art Trent. Do you want to take us through your early education and how you've got to where you are just now, just very briefly?
Well, I studied fine art at Nottingham Trent, and it was mostly abstract, but it was underpinned by drawing, observational drawing. And I found myself in Chelmsford in 2004, and there was no studios. And so I was working from the kitchen table, and I saw the master's course in children's book illustration, and I thought that would be a challenge because I would learn about narrative and sequential image and making picture books. And when I graduated, I went back to painting on different scales, and it was more narrative and using the skills that I'd learned on the course.
Well, of course, this takes us to the works that you submitted for the annual exhibition. The rules that we gave you guys, not the rules, but the challenge we gave you guys was to have one work of any size and dimension or medium in the gallery itself, and up to 2 more works online, because the show has a dual online aspect. So tell us, did you create these works especially for the exhibition, or was it works in progress? Tell us how you arrived at them, and why you chose the ones that you did for the exhibition.
Well, I thought it was a great opportunity to make some new work. I'd just come back from Greece, and a gallery in Greece they'd purchased the ones that I probably would have shown, actually. So I decided that I would make some of a similar scale. This one's actually bigger than the ones that I took to Greece, but the companion pieces are the same size. But I continued with the same theme of landscape, with these figures and creatures inhabiting them.
And so where does that theme come from? Is that just purely stream of conscience, or is it things that you collect? Or, I mean, all these strange creatures and little bits of landscape and built environment and so on. It's fantastic and rich. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, the landscape, my previous work focused on domestic interiors, and I think with the pandemic, we were all going outside. So I don't think it's any coincidence that it became more focused on the landscape and the foliage. And I also had a residency in Nottingham at the allotments. The St Anne's allotments are quite famous. I didn't realise how big they were until I had this residences. There's 600 allotments over 75 acres. And it's quite an amazing warren of these walled gardens. And there's a little road that winds through it. And so I spent quite a lot of time there doing observational drawings, and that inspired it. But also I've been to, when I go to places, I tend to find the botanical gardens or the public parks and do observational drawings there. But I don't actually work from those when I'm painting. It's all from memory. So these actually are just like abstracted from those images in my head.
So do you plan it, or do you just simply write, I'm going to place a building here, and I'll maybe see what happens next to it. I'll put a meadow there while you're painting, or is there a well-worked drawing before you start painting?
Oh, absolutely not. What I do is start with a few strokes and big splashes of colour, and then I start drawing buildings and masking buildings, and then I respond to what's there. So I'll place if I place a building somewhere else, I'll respond to that somewhere else in the painting and with colour, and so the whole thing. And there's a lot of scrubbing out and evolving.
The colours are amazing, Jackie, and they remind me of Persian miniatures. And
yeah.
I think you spent time in India, didn't you?
I did. I was lucky enough to have a residency in India. It was fully funded. It was fantastic. It was spending time with Indian artists, and until you go to India, you don't realise what the light's like as well. And I visited the Baroda gallery and museum and picture gallery, which is actually inspired by the V&A in the UK. And so I saw these little miniatures actually in the context of Indian gallery and Indian architecture and landscape. So it was wonderful. And also I had there was another residency at the Quad Gallery, which is a public gallery in Derby, not far from me. And there was an artist, I'm just trying to think of his name now, Imran Qureshi, and he runs the Maktab School of painting in Pakistan. And his students came over and they mentored and guided us through the process of miniature painting. So we learned how to make gouache and brushes, and it was a very slow process. And that informs my painting, because this happened just before lockdown. but it sort of allowed me to slow down my process as well and make these intense paintings, because I feel like I didn't have to like rush it, and I could spend time on elements like the detailed elements of a miniature painting.
Well, we've got a good shot of it on the pink wall in the gallery, just to give you an idea of scale. And I wanted to show this one of how it's center of the what was known as the President's Wall in the Academy. That was traditionally where the president would have their work. So you've got that honour, albeit on a pink wall, surrounded by lots of other exuberant works around about it. But let's have a quick look at the two other works that are online that we weren't able to put in the exhibition. And these are, you said, are slightly smaller. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, slightly smaller. And just what Debbie was saying there about Indian miniature paintings and the sort of this luscious decorative quality of the surface. But also, are you when you've painted a duck or a little figure or a strange little Nunu type character, are you kind of making any kind of social connections or political connections, or just simply playing with these things as aesthetic kind of celebrations? Or what's your thought process when you start to improvise when they come out?
I did go through a period of making like clusters of figures and looking at human behavior through these figures, but these are all isolated, but they sort of have a connection with each other. I think the eye is guided round the painting through these figures and the way the direction of the figures, and yeah, it's the story's there, but I don't tell, I allow other people to make their own interpretations.
I mean, do you find that things that you add subconsciously, that a few days or a few weeks later you think, that's why that appeared, because it's something I've seen or read? You find
absolutely, absolutely. It's like the little faces that I've got, and there's the one on the Telling Tales painting. They're on little saucers. Don't know if you can see them. They're little blue, like saucers floating around. If you look in the right-hand corner, there's a sort of a royal blue one with little. They look like little dots, but there's little faces on those, and they sort of reminded me of COVID, really. But also they can be, on the flip side is, they could be like joyful little beings.
Well, I mean, I think Debbie said about the depth of colour and the exuberance of colour and the colour combinations is quite remarkable, and something that I know is not that it's not easy, it's not difficult to do, but it's putting it together to have that kind of lusciousness and working without
yes.
having.
And the patterny bits are really fascinating, the way you kind of blend the colours, match the colours together with all the different patterns.
And I look forward to a day when I can see a lot of these paintings in the same space, and you'll need to keep us in touch when that's going to happen. There's just a little bit more time, Jackie. Now, I also was incredibly impressed by your drawings, and we'll see a few more of your drawings in a minute. But this is a work that I saw just a few weeks ago, the last day of the Trinity Boy Wharf Drawing Prize, when it was showing in Dundee. Is this slightly more sculptural, three-dimensional tableau? Is that something the first time you've done this, or is there a history to this kind of work for you?
No, I set myself a challenge of doing something three-dimensional. I was given a small bursary as part of a group exhibition in Derby to do something new, and it was a real struggle for me. Gravity isn't something that I deal with well, and I actually enrolled on an architectural model making course, but with COVID it was cancelled. So I muddled through a book, which, so the final result is quite Heath Robinson. And it was 7 pages of instructions for the Trinity Boy Wharf to actually install that.
I bet I was looking at it thinking, how did they reconstruct that? Because it's really delicate. It could easily rip or tear or break the balsa wood or the plywood.
Yeah.
But the notions of working with, it's mostly pen, or a lot of it is pencil, isn't it? Pencil and ink, is that right?
Yeah. There's Yeah, this ink and it's mostly ink, a bit of watercolor, I think, and there is a little bit oil painting in there as well. Haven't got the view from here.
Yeah.
And there's all different materials, acrylic, and trying to make the acrylic stand up, and there's ply and different veneers there, and it was just making something work from different directions, which I'd never done before. So you had to make it work whether you were looking from above, below, from left or right. So it took quite a long time.
Well,
Looks great.
So, hello.
I was just saying it looks great.
Yeah. Well, we're just about time up there, Jackie, but we've got a couple more works, some stuff you're working on just now. Give us a little sneak preview of what's happening and why you're doing this.
Oh, this was just a little drawing in my sketchbook, an observational drawing of a bench with, this is on the allotment, and she's so imaginative, Val, who has this allotment. She's an artist herself, and she has all these strategically placed things, but this is like willow that is woven over this seat, and it reminded me of the little den. So the last drawing is it's a response to the Ukraine war, believe it or not. It was like the yellow, you're talking about subconscious. I hadn't realized that, I hadn't associated it with Ukraine, but it was like trying to find a peaceful solution, sort of hidey holes for these people. And, it's just a way of dealing with it on that day. It was just a little drawing that I was trying to sort out in my head how these people could be saved.
Yeah, because while there is a childlike charm about what you do, and there's a kind of illustrative thing there's something much more robust and deep and earthy, and taking on whatever subject that happens to be floating through your mind. In this case, what's on most of our minds at the moment is the Ukraine conflict. You can see how that's transmitted through it. These little blurry creatures, nobody quite settled. People are trying to find ways to go through that. I think it's a magnificent little drawing. I really look forward to seeing how this work plays out. Thank you, Jackie. That's great. I'm sure there'll be time for some questions and some thoughts as we go through it, and you can be talking about other people's work. Has anybody else got any final comments or thoughts before we move on? And those of you that are watching on the webinar, you can add your questions and we'll go through them. Is there any questions, Nick, at the moment?
Nope, nothing came up.
Came through. Okay. So we'll now move on. Thank you, Jackie. A virtual applause from the audience. There's Catherine behind me is doing it. So we now move on to, as you'll see from the image behind here, to Laura Foots, who's all the way down in Margate.
Hello.
Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about your background? I put a little bit up here, but you can maybe give us a little bit more, flesh this out a little bit.
Yes, you've written a lovely little caption there for me. So I didn't study fine art initially when I went to university, because I was the first to go to university of parents who had to leave school at 15 because they were Irish immigrants, and you know the story. So they wanted me to do law. That didn't work out. And then I kind of compromised with languages because that sounds fancy. But art, no. What can you do? You can't make money with art. That's not going to help you in life. So they think, so yeah, I studied languages, and languages is basically a gateway to art anyway, and culture. And I lived in France to save money on the tuition fees over there. And while I was in France with a French partner at the time, I really got back into art because it's France. I lived in Paris. So you can imagine kind of drawing all the time from museums and just getting very creative. And then I ended up getting a scholarship to the Royal Drawing School in London with the portfolio I'd made in France over the 5 years I was there. And through the drawing school, did a 1-year program there. And they introduced me to lots of these people that I'd never come into contact with otherwise, like the collections that my work has ended up in. And that gave me the opportunity to try and pursue art.
You must have, it couldn't have just been that year at the drawing school that taught you all those things. You must have been drawing and doodling and things, because you're so dexterous, and your drawing in particularly is incredible. You must have been doing that on your own anyway, yeah?
Oh, for sure. I've been drawing since I can remember, since I was baby, before I could probably do anything else. And it's an obsession. And also because I was so ill, because I have Crohn's disease. And since I was 13, I've been in and out of hospital. And they said I would never go to uni, I would never travel, da da da. So another reason my parents wanted more security for me. So yeah, I ended up having quite a sheltered youth because I just couldn't go out, just having intestines removed all the time and drawing in hospital. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know that will come up as we go through the works. I guess when I invited you to become one of the artists, I'd become familiar with some work you were posting on Instagram about 1 or 2 years ago, where you were looking at from rooftops into buildings into people's houses, that kind of rear window sort of flavor about them, and that resonated with me. And I kind of guessed, oh, that's what I'll expect Laura to do. But no, you came up with this. So tell us how you arrived at this corpse flower.
Well, I was a bit intimidated to have anything like that show against your work, because your work's so amazing in this genre. So I thought, no, I don't feel confident doing an architectural piece this time round. So I'll do something much more me, which I wanted something based in Edinburgh. So I had these sketches that I found when I recently moved of the corpse flower that is in the Botanic Gardens over there when I went to visit a friend. And when you gave me the opportunity, I thought, oh, I could make the corpse flower, but not just any flower. It could really be a metaphor for many things. So my disease is in there, anxiety about health, transience. This plant blooms every 5 to 10 years, and when it does, it smells of rotting corpse, and all that kind of macabre, sinister kind of things really appeals to me because I've spent most of my childhood in hospitals on bowel wards and things. So yeah, I wanted to make something beautiful but also sinister.
Well, I think you've achieved that. So tell us the process. How much of this was from reference or looking at photographs of these things, or how much of it was from memory, or how do you get to this point in a painting?
So this is from the photograph of Royal Botanic Gardens as it was. Then I have the pictures that I did, little sketches, like I think so big, on my notebook when I was there. So it's a blend of, I'd say, sketches, the photo they have on the website, but also the memory of it, walking around with my friend and just exploring. And it wasn't at night time when I was there, obviously, but I wanted to make it nighttime because artificial light is something that runs through most of my work because my dad's an electrician.
Ah, okay. I thought it's because you liked Americana, film noir, and all that stuff. You probably
That
do
could
as
also
well.
play in. There's no doubt influences from all sides, but yeah, I like creating my own light like my dad does. So
Yeah, it's and acrylic is your most chosen medium rather than oils, is it?
it's actually because I'm not supposed to be painting in this flat. I'm in
Ah,
since lockdown. I lost my studio and
right.
I've been doing work in my lounge, and my landlord still doesn't know about that. So
Well, yeah,
I've changed to
you don't.
water based.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't know actually looking at it. I mean, there it is in situ. For those of you that have not visited the gallery, when we were selecting positions to show all the work, I had presumed that Laura's would be in one of the bigger galleries upstairs. But even against all the coloured walls and all the bits and pieces there, it kind of didn't work because it is so electric. Now I know why. And then we found this little slot between the pillars downstairs, and there's a great long view of it. Debbie and Jackie and Michael, what do you think of the position when you saw it there?
It illuminates the space like a little shrine or something. It's very between the pillows. It's a perfect space for it.
Yeah, it's
I love the space.
it's a picture that gets better actually the more because I hadn't realized how rich it was when I first saw the images of it, but seeing it in the flesh day after day over the last few weeks, it's just sensational. And you must have been really thrilled with it, Laura, when you were finished, because I know you did it right up until the last minute.
I still don't think it's finished, and maybe I should go and look at it and get happier with it, because I'm also terrible at taking photographs of things. So
Well,
any
it's
pictures you
sold
have
now,
seen,
so you
I can't see it. I have to get up
finish
there
it.
and see it. Yeah, gosh. Yeah, thank you so much for choosing and giving me the chance to do something bombastic like this.
That's great. No, and what I was really thrilled is you didn't just provide me with work that I expected or you've already done. You actually made new work, and I think you've all done that, which is sensational. So you've provided us with an eclectic selection of other images. Do you want to just quickly talk us through each one and how they relate to your practice and obviously your health and so on?
So this first one, Gutted Fish, is the piece I had in my portfolio to get me into the Raw Drawing School. And the interview panel were intrigued by this, but it's nothing crazy. It's just me having my intestines removed, and how I've felt ever since. And artificial light, just like in the corpse flower, I always have that in work because I like making my own light. And I love the intensity of ink drawings because that's what I grew up with. Ink next to a phone pad was my only materials until much later. So I feel very comfortable with ink.
Is that with a dip pen or with a brush?
It's one of those with a dip, with a fine nib.
Yeah.
Fine nib. Scratchy.
Yeah,
like etchings. I love etchings, but I don't do any because they're expensive to make.
I obviously hadn't seen this at all before, so it was really great to get these. Was it yesterday or the day before? Okay, so Morphine Dream, the Heron Surgeon.
Yes. This is a similar thing. I'm very kitsch. I'm from Birmingham originally, and there's lots of like kitsch working class influences in my house, like the three ducks on the wall and gnomes. And I just love that kind of lowbrow thing. And that's why my corpse flower is quite bombastic and bold and poppy. And I think some of this kind of pen and ink work is like that, a bit tongue in cheek. But again, a gutted fish, it's just a metaphor for me of the disease that I've been living with since I was 13, so 15 years, and the surgeon, that lovely bird. And
when you're doing these works, and you're still doing these works, how cathartic is it, or how is it just, well, this is all I can, this is the subject that always will crop up in my work because I can't get away from it. What's the kind of gymnastics that goes on when you create these works?
Sometimes, well, this is early work, I suppose. I tried to find funny ways to make a joke out of myself, almost make a joke out of the situation. And as I've got older and the disease has carried on, and I've had more operations, it's not so funny. It's not so funny anymore. So I don't think my ink drawings are quite like this anymore, but I've always tried to find a way to use it because it's taken so much from me. Yeah. So I wanted to make something come back.
Yeah, they feel a real positive force, and obviously there is anger and despair in there as well. But there's you are celebrating yourself as an artist through that process. There's no doubt. And this is more like one of the ones that I was familiar with you doing. So tell us about this. How do you arrive at these pictures? This is a tremendous series that you did. Were they all from the same period? Have you always done work of this type?
This is a little bit later. This is kind of more recent. When I lived in Arlington House, which is 18-floor tower block in Margate in 2019, before the pandemic, I had this gorgeous view, and I was all on my own, and I'd broken up with a partner, and I was feeling very isolated and didn't know anyone, and I was looking out the window all the time, and I was just imagining, this is my view to the right, but also what else is going on in this place? Who else is alone? What's going on in the corridors? What's going on beneath me and above me? And I think this is really communicating with the work that you make as well, Robbie, and how you dissect space and think about it as a kind of journey. And again, I wasn't feeling confident enough to put anything like that in the shows.
I'll take that as a compliment, but I think you're doing pretty well with these, and all the work. Hang on, that's our 10 minutes, but we'll carry on just a little bit more.
Sorry,
but no, it's all right. But it took me a long time to figure out if I wanted to show inside and outside. I had to find a device, and I went back to Eagle Comic Ashell cutaways, the insides of buildings that were done, and finding a way of doing that. and I've loved, and that's really been a major shift for me over the last 5-10 years. But there's something else. You do it more you do it in a more fragmented way, in that it feels more like Rear Window, where you're taking away walls, and there's slightly shattered glass effect that goes on through these things. It's beautiful, just gorgeous. The way you use pattern within your coloration is something that I notice a lot. The wallpapers, and also the pattern in the corpse flower. And then we've got a series of drawings, which I'll go through relatively quickly, but maybe you can tell us what role these play in your practice just now, or have played.
This again, patterns and dissecting space. This is a hint of the Birmingham suburbs that I grew up in, with those faux Tudor kind of patterns on the outside of the house and the rows of terraces and things. And my dad is, well, electrician / builder before he retired. So the building trade has just been part of my life. Painter, decorators, carpenters, brickies, Irish immigrant classic style thing. So it's in the blood. So space, it's not just about space, it's about building and constructing, because women in the family were not involved in that. And I really wanted to be, but it was just not. But I am now, in my own way, creating. And this story is, again, another morphine one. This one is from Birmingham, when I was at the hospital there. And you can see the clock tower of Birmingham University campus in the background, where the hospital used to be. And this is where I had my first intestinal operation. And we have these weavers, and I felt like I was being fixed by some force, by something that I couldn't explain. And I tried to find metaphors and ways of explaining it to myself, and coming to terms with the invasiveness of that procedure, just by making light again, in a way. But
it's one of, well, for me, it's one of the most powerful things that you've shown, that I've seen of your work, in terms of revealing your condition, but also the kind of meanderings of thought. That the umbrella feels like it's pumping air back into this very flat face. I don't know if that's an intentional thing. That's what I thought at first. It was almost like an old pump, but just extraordinary. And that's just an ink drawing, is it? Not just
some inks. It's A3 size, with inks and gouache, and so it's.
We'll just flash through the remaining ones, maybe just say a little bit about each one.
This simple is cake eater. I shouldn't eat cake. I was told I wasn't supposed to have any food for 6 months. I had to have food in my vein, but I just disagreed. I just went off and had some cake and really suffered. So this was a little drawing to remind me not to do that. This is an operation. This is a cathartic drawing I did on a hospital tray with felt tip pens and bits that my mum brought in. And
terrific.
Nothing else to say about that.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on and telling us a little bit about your practice, and how much of it's been informed by Crohn's disease, and you're living through this life, but also not being. I don't get the sense talking to you that you're using it as being a victim, but simply this is how I am, and this is what I'm dealing with, and this is the work I make. So it's just tremendous to see that, and finally, because we've actually never met before tonight, even though I selected you as my invited artist, we've only communicated via the digital world. So thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And I will hopefully get your contributions to some questions shortly. So we'll move on. Thank you. Virtual applause. So now we shall move on to our third invited artist tonight, and that's Michael Johnson. You can see his image behind there. Michael, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
I'll let you start.
Okay. Well, after listening to Jackie and Laura, there are lots of similarities, and the sort of educational one, I probably empathise with Laura to some degree, because although I did an art degree at Reading, I'd already started drawing, which I'm still doing incessantly, when I was a kid. I think probably in reaction, sort of going a bit introspective in reaction to quite a lot of moving about that we did as a family, because my father was a mechanical engineer and we moved sort of, well, very regularly in my childhood. And drawing really was something I learned to do myself, a bit like Laura sounds like she did. So the kind of degrees I did was in some ways a bit of lost time, I think. And
And
I think a lot of my education that's men tenting has been just getting on with it myself. And that's really manifest in the work that's hanging in Edinburgh at the moment.
and you're in King's Lynn at the moment.
King's Lynn in Norfolk, yeah.
Is that where you've been for a long time?
On and off for about over 20 years, yeah. But I've lived in London and other places in the interim. But yeah, this is my main base.
Go ahead. Okay, well, let's start with the work that's in the gallery. Now, again, I'll say a little bit about this. I discovered Michael's, I first became aware of Michael's work about 3 or 4 years ago. And the work that I was mainly interested in at that time were your multi-figure compositions and so on. And when I invited you, a bit like Laura, I sort of fully expected to get a great multi-figure, lots of things going on. And you had some of that, but you also had these multiples, because when you came to visit me a couple of years ago, you were up in Scotland with drawings, and this was the format. So tell us about how you arrived at these types of works and what they mean to you.
Well, funnily enough, they do sort of a bit like, as Laura said, how drawing obviously runs through her life. I started off by drawing, and it was in the pandemic when we all were trying to find a way through in our own way. Drawing had been something I'd always sort of reached for in difficult times, and I started going out for the walks that we were allowed to have, and I started making sketches of people and things to try and manifest a contact with people that we were obviously finding difficult in conventional ways. And it was only on sort of pinning them up in my studio that I felt they had quite a kind of redemptive energy, if you like, under the circumstances, a sort of immediacy, but also a kind of perhaps an untidy bravery in the way that normally we might have time to sort of tidy things up. Yeah. I guess I decided to work with the rawness of improvisation that you have to use when you're out amongst people and in real life. And they I only gradually realized they were working as groups each day. And it was that aspect's quite crucial to a work such as this, I think, because there was this unpremeditated, unplanned kind of process. It was also energized by the fact that since childhood, I've always lacked confidence, not unlike most people, I'm sure, but every time I put my pen or chalk on a piece of paper, I think, why are you doing this? You can't do it. And the great thing about going out for these walks in the pandemic was that I just plunged in. If I saw a bird briefly or a person walking, whatever, I just had to get a representation down. And somehow, also because of the pandemic, I think there was an extra sort of an awareness of fragility of life and so on that also gave a kind of pathos to quite a lot of the imagery. And it became quite addictive in the end, just going out each day, because I knew I was going to have to act. Whereas in the studio, there's a lot more time to contemplate, procrastinate, and so on.
For this one, how many pieces would be done in the same sitting, or would you be doing it from different locations and then building it back in the studio?
Quite often they're all A4, and I might have just started, gone out for the day, not knowing what I was going to do. I think with this one, I just did some drawings of quite close up to the tree. Plus I'd seen animals like the squirrel, and I'd sit down and just draw a representation from memory of something seen. And it was only within probably the first day that I sort of got back to the studio, looked at them, and they looked a bit of a mess because I'd been working quite close to the tree. But I gradually worked out, the second day, that I was going to embark on piecing together a tree if I could. So amongst the year's work, it was pretty premeditated, really. Yeah. But I was sitting close to the tree, and I think I finished it in about 3 days of intense work last autumn. And it felt like it was going, what was it going to be? I think I shared photographs of it sort of a third the way through, and it just looked a bit of a mess, really. But that didn't really matter because I'd sort of got used to a method of working in the last couple of years where I actually was using the fact I didn't really care, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And that was incredibly freeing. And then I think after the second day, I could see that something was, there was some of the energy of my love of trees, but this particular type of tree, and this tree in particular was coming through, even though I was working so close to the tree that in a way it was each part could sometimes look at, well, not necessarily look as though it was generating much energy. Yeah,
we're obviously now looking at an install shot from the RSA, and I should tell everyone that Michael's work alone took one man a whole day to put up because
oh dear.
How did you fix each piece of paper to the wall? What with?
We used little drafting pins, the little ones that you hammer in. That's what you intended us to use, Michael. Or had you other thoughts?
Yeah, I can only apologise retrospectively for the causing such difficulties. But I mean, the strange thing is that a lot of the work that I've made in the last 2 years, which it's uneven as it's likely to be when made under those sort of improvisatory sort of circumstances. But I've got the boxes of them here. When I open them, it's not the particular dexterity or anything fancy about any given drawing, but there's a lot of energy contained in those boxes that seem to be informed by the circumstances of their making, and because of the pandemic. And the energy is still there. I always loved Van Gogh's drawings, particularly. I admire the later ones, but I particularly liked his early work when he was the potato eater period, and when he lived with the miners, because of the sheer humanity and energy that went into every line. I wouldn't say that this drawing necessarily is typical of those, but in terms of hanging, when I got things to the studio, I didn't really care what they looked like. I didn't really mind. And if I'd been able to hang the holly tree in an exhibition space, I guess I would have reflected some of that, the crudity, if you like, or the.
I think the crudity in terms of the physicalness of the paper, the
Right.
stressed edges, everything about it is part of that work, and we'll see other work in a minute that has that same quality. But let's move on to some of the other work I was describing. There's two more works on the online exhibition, which I'll just go through relatively quickly, Michael. So these are the two. This is What the River Knows and Flow Country, and they're both recent works as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they're both made sort of partly thinking of a perhaps more conventional choice of an oil painting for the Edinburgh invitation, but they're both in the evenings after drawing during the day during the pandemic. I would do a doodle in the living room, and these are both based on fairly closely on the drawings made in the evening. So doodles, but doodles informed by things seen. And in the case of What the River Knows, that was looking back to when I lived in London in the 1980s. And it was kind of just almost a sort of reverie memory drawing, which I thought would be unreproducible, if you like, in oil painting. But actually, by failing with it repeatedly, I think it's got a sort of palimpsest quality to it, which does reflect the mood of making the drawing.
I like the slightly distressed, fragmented feeling of the paint. I presume that's to do with things not working and going back on. And
that's right. Yeah.
This one has less of that because it feels like it's more positively painted. But there's something about the struggle which has actually allowed this to have a different mood and a character.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to quickly go through the remaining paintings that you've provided for me today, just to see if there are themes, or a bit like Jackie. You're drawing stream of conscience from memory, from notes, from all the rest of it. When you have time to reflect on the imagery, what kind of conversations do you have with yourself with regard to what it is you're painting of and about?
I think it's quite listening to Jackie, it was, you know, I recognized a lot of the, you know, the way of thinking, the way of allowing things to emerge. But also, as Jackie mentioned, doing a lot of drawing from life. That's always been the bedrock of what I do. But perhaps I was a bit imprisoned before, probably even just until the last few years, I was a bit imprisoned by a kind of, you know, doing that drawing from life. Whereas, as you've shown with this thing, the snowman, for example, I've just don't really care anymore. I just do what I'm sort of feel like I'm 20 again, in terms of these things, because I'm just improvising it. I think another thing that helped me during the pandemic was that actually getting older, sort of into my late 50s, I had that sort of sense of mortality and, you know, getting into the last, you know, home stretch, if you like, and also the sheer lack of sort of worldly success also could fed in to the vulnerability that was appropriate, of course, for everybody. And so I felt when I was out drawing that actually assisted me. It helped me be more abandoned, if you like. So the two oil paintings that you showed that are in the online exhibition, they're sort of more conventional, if you like, but I have far less sort of passion for them than I do for the drawings.
And I think what we can see in this last work of the snowman, where you're using the same format of the A4 bits of paper, how much of that was done looking at things, or was that all in the studio improvised?
No, none in the studio. That was made literally in the snow,
Right.
walking about, and you know, real pain in the neck when you've got to you want to draw urgently, as I was talking about earlier on, but in contradiction of that, this is drawn urgently in front of the subject as I'm walking. It was a walk, as many of the drawings in the last couple of years have been. But at the same time, I'd sketched out on the paper in the studio the crude outline of a figure. So everything I drew, from traffic to people I saw dog walking or whatever it was, they were going to evolve around the perimeter of this figure, if you like, or in relation to it. So there was that element of premeditation, but it's the counterpoint. I think, as your partner Catherine, we talked about the energy that you get from working from life, which she does most of the time, and I found that actually standing, say, at the bypass drawing traffic, however sort of crude my representation of that traffic around the leg, as it ended up around the leg of the snowman at the bottom, some of the energy of sort of being out there and drawing from life mixed in and riffed really well with what is an crudely abstract design.
Well, Michael, we'll have to invite you back for all of you for your own talk, because we could listen to your discussions on your work for hours. We've got a comment here from John Saunders. Incredible work, Michael. Spellbinding it really is. I don't know an artist who is so authentic, brave, and energetic. Just brilliant. Maureen says, agree with John's comment, and John Saunders, the snowman is just superb. Knocks me out every time. Is this one of your friends? No.
I've never met them. I haven't paid them. Bottle of whiskey on its way.
Really good, but I concur with that. Michael, thank you very much. I'm sorry we've just rushed you at the end there. But,
no, not at all.
I think it's been fantastic to see a little glimpse of your practice, and hopefully we'll have time for some more questions at the end. So we'll now move on to our final invited artist, if I can get my thing to work. Debbie Lee is the only one of the artists of the four that I actually knew in person before I invited them to come and join us. So Debbie and I first, I think it was actually in Siena we first met, actually.
Yeah, on the Duncan Ross Scholarship.
In 1990. You had just graduated from Glasgow School of Art, and me, Edinburgh College of Art. And then we became colleagues many years later at Gray's School of Art. But I'll leave it there, Debbie. Maybe you could fill in some of the gaps to now, and then we can start talking about your work.
Okay, right. So, so this picture you've got up now is a new picture that I've been working on, Dante's Inferno, which was inspired by that trip, the John Kinross trip to Florence. And so in that particular one, Dante, which is a kind of a me figure, which in my version of it turns either female or male. It kind of fluctuates. And this is lost in the midlife woods with the wild things, the wild leopard woman. And then he's kind of meeting at the bottom Beatrice, who's his love, who's kind of inspiring him to carry on with his quest and through hell, through a journey through hell, which the last few years have been for many of us. One bad thing happening after another.
Well, needless to say, you've had an extraordinary, diverse career, having originally graduated in Glasgow School of Art, went on to the Royal College of Art, and studied in Chicago, and been all sorts of places. And again, like Jackie, I've studied in India, and I know you've been to Cyprus and lots of other bits in between.
And as you've been to Cyprus too, you have crossed over now and again.
And you find yourself now as an artist in Dorset. For whatever reason, but you can tell us a little bit about that. So when you got the invitation, I think you're probably the one artist of the four of you. Actually, that's not true, because you had a number of works, and you were discussing with me which way you should go. There was a big red one at one point we were going to choose. Is that right?
Yes, that's over here.
We'll have a look at your studio in a minute, and we'll have a quick look at Michael's studio in a minute as well, because you're both in your studios. So tell us why you arrived at this one and how this one came about, the Let Loose in the Galleries.
Well, I was really overwhelmed when you invited me to kind of exhibit something at the RSA, because I really wanted to do that, to get work up in Scotland again and to see familiar faces and to be showing with work which I'm familiar with and which I feel akin to, is quite amazing. But I had this dream that kind of week about running wild in the gallery, and this image emerged from that, and I decided to put my new kind of paintings in the background of this gallery, and this kind of arsenic poisonous green wallpaper, kind of commenting on something toxic going on.
I should have made one of the walls in the gallery arsenic green. Maybe that's the next time.
Maybe in an old-fashioned gallery, I was thinking in my mind, with these new paintings and these new people, the young people, and as I'm a artist mother, kind of being aware of women in bringing children in the galleries, and no, that's so, and it was really huge one to put in, so thank you for hanging it. But I thought, well, where else am I going to get a chance to hang it? So making the most of that invitation next to Olivia Irvin, who was also teaching at Gray's. It was lovely to see her work again after so long. And Barbara Ray's on the other side, which was amazing because she used to teach at Glasgow in the Life Room. I didn't know her very well, but often I'd come across her in the Life Room.
Ever since I first met you, and a bit like Michael, you obsessively draw. I met you more recently. I think it was.
So do you. You do a sketchbook every notebook.
We went for a coffee after not meeting for about 10 years. We went to the the cafe down at the Royal Academy down in the basement. I can't remember what it's called now. And you did a fantastic self-portrait. I'm sorry, a portrait of me. I say fantastic because you did it while we're having a cup of tea, and it was just brilliant. There's a lovely playfulness, disarmingly simple way that you draw. Some might compare you with some of the early works of Paul Arago, others Stephen Campbell and the Glasgow painters. Where do you see, or some might say that it goes much darker into rich medieval history of art. Where do you position yourself in terms of the kind of images you put together and how you put them together? Are there heroes that you've got that you can identify?
Well, I do identify with Paula Rego an awful lot. I love her work, and during the making of this painting, I did go and see a couple of shows of hers, a couple of major shows that were on in London, which so it probably influenced that one a great deal, seeing those. And I love what she's done for kind of women, raising a kind of profile on issues through visual command that she has of visual things. In fact, I've just been to Bristol and seen another show of hers. So yes, I'm very much influenced by her at the moment. And you've put on another painting of mine, which is in the background of my studio, actually, so you can get an idea of the scale of it, because we were invited to put 2 pieces online. I put the standing lamp, because sometimes I feel a bit ignored in the art world. And so sometimes I feel a bit like a bit of furniture or something, it's, you know, kind of there somewhere in the background. So it's nice to have the light on it, the focus on it, or the focus on the woman by the bed.
Michael also touched on that, and I think one of the things that resonated with all of you for me is that these are artists, these are 4 artists, there was plenty more I could have chosen, but these are 4 that I particularly want to see not being ignored, having their work shown, having a spotlight put on them. And if I can help that in any way, then that's a really great achievement. But there's no doubt there's a resilience to yourself and Michael, because we're all of an age where our practices could have gone down, you know, it could have gone down rabbit holes, but you've kept vital. Has that been a really important part of your practice, is to keep challenging yourself and keep offering a different solution as you've gone through it? Because I don't think you've ever settled for a particular style. I mean, there are characteristics, but you're constantly searching, I think.
Yes, and the animation came upon me quite suddenly as well, of having children and having less kind of time in the studio and more time in the house at the kitchen table. And animation was something that I could do and focus on and put together. And it was interesting to see how you kind of took to animation so quickly and developed your work.
It's been a secret thing lurking in the background of my life ever since I was a 10-year-old, and only now that the technology has caught up with me. And enough about me. Talking of the animation, we've got 4 stills of the little smorgasbord of animations that are online, which I'm going to show in a minute. Tell us a little bit about your method and why you feel you need to animate. What does it do to your practice that painting doesn't, or do they complement each other for you?
Well, it's really interesting. The animation has really helped me kind of give me confidence to kind of erase the work and redraw it with more confidence, because these animations are just on one piece of paper, where the drawing is kind of erased and redrawn and photographed each time. And then run together in an animation program. It's a very simple program. And my daughter does the music to go with them. And usually I work on an animation and a painting. And sometimes I'll do the painting first, or sometimes I'll do the animation first. Sometimes I'll do a series of prints to kind of help me kind of arrive at color combinations. But mainly I'll do drawings in my sketchbook, you know, kind of from life of my daughter or myself. And I'll always have a mirror with me to draw the figure if I haven't got a person available. And this is kind of severing the relationship between mother and daughter, because my mother passed away during COVID, and also thinking of my relationship with my daughter and the winding the skein, and also fascinated by Maya Deren, Deren's movie, Transfigured Time, where she has this kind of winding the wool, and this series of images that the journey that this image goes through is just based on that sequence of Maya Deren and what it meant to me.
I mean, I was going to ask you. I mean, you've depicted versions of yourself and presumably also your mother and now your daughter throughout your practice. Always at a particular stage in life, or is that just is that a deliberate thing? This sort of girl going into womanhood, or is that something that is I've picked up wrong, or?
Well, I think it's very interesting how artists depict themselves, at what age they kind of stick to in their self-portraiture. Some artists kind of, if they're doing a representation of themselves, maybe they'll kind of go for a younger version of themselves, or a kind of as they are version. And I think it's quite interesting looking at a lot of females artists' work that it seems to be a younger version of themselves a lot of the time, not all the time, but yeah, and the generation thing is really important to me, the intergeneration thing between daughter, mother, grandmother, and the kind of stories we pass and the kind of power we pass to each other, or the kind of little secrets we kind of pass on or don't pass on. And yeah, it's quite an important.
Just ignore me. I'm just trying to seamlessly flip between the PowerPoint and your videos. So I'm just going to just do that in a minute. What are we seeing at the moment? Are we still seeing my shared screen? I can't quite.
I'm seeing you full screen.
You're seeing me full screen. Very nice site, I'm sure that is. But hang on, let me get up the RSA page with your videos on it. What's happened to that now? That's why I chose Debbie last, because I knew this would be a problem, moving from one to the other.
In the meantime, we do have a question, Robbie, if you want to.
Okay. Can you ask that? I don't have the questions up on screen at the moment.
Sure. So Anne said, I've enjoyed this session enormously. It's been a true pleasure to hear from all the artists. They have given so honestly and generously descriptions of their work and motivations. All the work is brilliant. Could I ask Debbie how she organizes consistent lighting? Thank you.
Well, if I can twist this computer around in a minute when I do a studio tour, you'll see I've got some studio lights, and kind of I arrange them on the drawing so I've got consistent lighting, and I block out the window light. So I'm working in a darkened studio with light that I can control, or I work on top of a backlit daylight table if I'm painting on glass, for instance, or doing something like that. I control the light.
Before we see your studio, Debbie, is everyone seeing the screen with the animation on it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to play all 3 minutes. I'm going to play a little sample of this so you can get an idea. I'm just going to move on so you can see all of them. Oh, I love this one. Okay, I think that gives a flavour. And if you want to see these in full, and you want to see all of the works on display, if you haven't done so already, all of them are available on the RSA annual exhibition website, which you can get to through the RSA website, which I'll show a link in a minute. Now, how do I stop sharing? Here we go, stop share. So Debbie, while we've got you, are you able to do a quick, if we can make Debbie full screen, Nick, you want to give a quick 360 around your studio, so you can, because you're in your studio, and it's always lovely to see how everyone's studio looks, and maybe the picture you were referring to, the lampshade lady.
Okay. There's the the lampshade lady and the lights, and up in the corner is one of the paintings of the mother and daughter winding and cutting the thread. And maybe I can get this one. There's the arm wrestlers, and let's see, oops, at the back, I'm just in the middle of a residency at Lemonade Litho in Bristol, and that's the first part of my Dante scroll on the wall, and some workings out of that. A new painting that I'm just starting, and a painting I'm trying to finish of pulling up the children, and some work on the back of an envelope. And this one was going to be a painting, but I can't get the whole of it, about the Aurora Consurgence that I was going to put in to the RSA, but I didn't. And this is all very haphazard. Here we go. Some new paintings over there. Yeah. The fridge magnets, and yes, my metal paintings, little metal paintings, stick onto the fridge with magnets, which are quite nice. My little printing press, plan chest, utility room painting. Anyway, that's a tour of my studio. There we go.
Fabulous. Listen, Debbie, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Robbie.
just while we're here, Michael, can we feature Michael's studio just briefly?
Okay, we'll try anyway.
Your
can you see anything?
Yeah, just to give an idea, just a little slow. I know you can't go around hugely, but you get an idea of. So, are you working on canvases stapled to the wall, Michael? Is that how you do it, or?
Yeah, that's a drawing, by the way, I'm working on at the moment.
Multiple bits of paper. Yeah.
There's this sort of drawings I work from.
Maybe don't move your camera quite so fast, so it gives it time.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. So that's the river, the London one. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, you've seen those. The rest is just a bit of a mess, really.
That's why you don't want to show the other side.
That's where the most interesting bits will be, I'm sure. Well, not the most interesting, Michael, but there will be interesting bits in there.
There is a question for you. Where is Michael showing his work now or soon, other than the RSA?
To the end of the month, I've got a painting in Norwich Cathedral, in a really nice exhibition about trees. And that's all I've got planned at the moment, I think. I've got an group exhibition in London in July. Well, obviously I'll share on social media.
You can find Michael on Instagram, and is very good at keeping everyone up to date with what he's up to.
Too good.
I'll just go through some of the other points or questions. All these artists are great. Congratulations, very well chosen. All deserve success, and people seeing their work more, hopefully. And Stanfield, I've enjoyed the session enormously. It's been a true pleasure to hear from all the artists. They all have given so honestly and generously descriptions of their work and their motivations. All work is brilliant. Could I ask Debbie how Debbie organises consistent lighting? So yeah, that's the one that's already read out. Sorry.
I become Michael's TV doodle drawings.
Yeah, Catherine behind me asks, how big are your TV doodle drawings? Are they sketchbook size, Michael?
Some of them start off on sort of envelopes, and then some of them are up to AA3. So the last week, the two that I think I posted on Instagram, they were an A3 pad opened up on my lap. So this sort of thing. Is that coming?
Great, fantastic, wonderful. Well, I think my next job is to find a venue to show all of you at the same time and show a significant number of works. So if there are any gallerists or people who've got a big space, because I knew one was never going to be enough, but it's part of what I hope is a really interesting show in terms of the conversation that your work has had with the the members' work and the open submission, and been really delightful to be involved with you guys over this last few months. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So much.
So we've done not bad. 10 minutes overrunning. I think we could have done worse than that. Thanks everyone for joining us on a warm, balmy May evening in Edinburgh. And the show is on until, Nick, is it the 12th?
12th of June.
12th of June. If you're in Edinburgh, come and see it. It's free. It's also incredibly well documented online. There are now some wonderful gallery photographs, moving photographs on the entry page as well. And I think this is the last public event. Or there is a hands-on art event for families coming up as well, Nick, isn't there?
There's two events actually. So there's the Family Art Day on Sunday. So families, and it's free to join. So families can come, and there'll be some activities based on the artworks in the annual exhibition that you can participate in. And then next Wednesday on the 25th is our annual Gillis Lecture, which will be on David Hockney, and it'll be delivered by Professor Martin Kemp.
And all details of that are on the RSA website, how to get
Yes, they are.
Okay, listen, I think we better wrap up. Thanks, everyone. We'll be in touch soon, guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, bye-bye.